Welcome to Hot Topics. In this video, we're going to discuss the 2023 NEC 220.4H. What kind of impact will this new section have pertaining to the standard and optional calculation and applying Table 310.12? Now, a standard calculation, as you see on the screen here, it'll be our illustration 1. Notice that we basically, and this comes out of our design book, chapter 22, Stallcup's electrical design book. What is the load in VA amps for a residential dwelling with the following loads? Now here you have these following loads, and there's three basically that we always look at as a designer, installer, or inspector. You have the general lighting and receptacle load, the 3VA. You have the 120 volt loads. Then you have your 240 volt loads. Then you know what you're dealing with if you happen to maybe be an inspector or electrician. Now, to find the first load in the illustration, we calculate the general lighting load and receptacle load. Now that's going to include all your general purpose receptacles and your lighting outlets, except for the small appliance circuits and the direct circuits that loads that we would have. So keep that in mind. So looking at the step 1, we have a 2,500 square foot dwelling unit in compliance with 220.11 of the code. And 3VA, we're going to get from 220.14J, I believe it is. And 3VA times 2,500, we come up with 7,500. Now notice all your lighting outlets, all your receptacle outlets comes from that calculation of 7,500 VA. Step 2, you're finding your small appliance circuits, and there are 3 of them. Naturally, you have 2 of them at 1,500 VA for the kitchen, dining room, breakfast room, pantry room, and so forth, 3,000. And then, of course, you know, in the design book, we go through how you determine when you need more. See? Now, the 1,500 is for the laundry area, so you add that up, 12,000. And that's when you add everything, the 7,500, 3,000, and 1,500 that you see in step 1 and step 2, 12,000. Now we are allowed to apply a demand in accordance with Table 2 to a 20.42. So we take the first 3,000 of the 12,000 at 100%, giving us 3,000. Then 3,000 from 12,000 would leave you 9,000 at 35%, 3,150. Total, 6,150 VA. Now in step 2, we're going to calculate the cooking equipment. And as you see in the information, we have a total of 9 kW and 10 kW, giving us 11,000. And we would pick up 220.61B1, and we are allowed 70% of that for the neutral. And you see it's a check mark there with a dot for the phase-to-phase, 7,700. Now, the dryer equipment, then we would have 5,000 is what we would use. And if we had over 4, we could have a demand factor. But since we do not have, you know, that total, then it's 220.54 table says 100% of that, so 5,000. Anything below 5,000, you bring it up automatically to 5,000, but this section, 220.54. Now, again, 70% of that in the step 2 here, under the column 2 there, calculating dryer load. You can apply 70% of that by 220.61B1. And we come up with 3,500, check mark, dot, representing phase-to-phase, ungrounded conductors, and then your neutral. Now, the calculated fixed appliance load now, we take all of the fixed appliances at 75%. And you can see the 120 volts got check marks there. The ungrounded conductors now will not see this neutral load. So that's 600, 750, 45. So adding those up, we come up with 10,650. Now there's been a change in the 2023 NEC that says any type of electrical car outlet for, electric car cannot be considered a fixed appliance load. It would be like a direct circuit type load that you would look at there under most conditions. So we pick up then after we take everything at 75% because we have 4 more, we come up with 10,650. Now, moving on, we select 75% of the 120 volt fixed appliances. So you have 4 of them listed here, 26, 1,000, 1,200, 1,600. We take our 75% and add all that 75% load up, we come up with 4,800, check mark, meaning it's neutral. See. Now, the largest between the heating and AC load is an interpretation. We interpret it to say, and there's a big change there now in the 2020, they're telling you that you're going to take 125%. So that's been fixed. But here, we're taking the largest of the 2 loads. So the heating unit, even at 125% of the AC, still is a greater load, so we come up with 20,000. And this code says that it's a non-coincidental type load by 220.51 and 220.60. So since this is such a large rating, the smaller ones drop, see, the AC. And when we get into calculating the largest motor, then we take the largest motor or appliance, and it's 2600 VA, which is the largest. And when we go back and do our selection in step 2 of the demand load 4, you see 2600. So we bring that down and take 25% of that per 220.50 and 430.24. See, 25% of that, 650. And so we would take the largest motor, and then we take 25% of that also, because it's a 120 volt load, we come up with 650. So now adding all that together, here's our loads. The general lighting load, we calculated 6,150. Cooking load, 11,000. Dryer load, 5,000. Appliance load, 10,650. The heating load, 20,000. And then the largest motor at 650, we come up with 53,450 VA is our total load for your ungrounded conductors. Now for the neutral, we looked at all the checks. And the general lighting loads, 6,150. The cooking load, 7,700. The dryer load, 3,500. The appliance load, 4,800. The largest motor, 650. Total, 22,800. Now when we divide, using our formula, current is equal to the VA divided by the voltage, 240 volt single phase service for the dwelling unit, divide that into 53,450 VA, we come up with 223 ounce. So that would be the size conductor that we would need. So we would need a 4-aught, wouldn't we? By this calculation. I kind of remember that. We'd need a 4-aught. And then for the neutral, it's 95 amps. Then we would need at least a number 3, see, if we had 75 degrees C terminals, which we won't get into that at this point. But remember these totals, we'll call them again. But now, the person says, well, we're going to run the optional. We're going to, instead of going that long standard calculation, most all the designers use the optional. So you have the same loads. I'm not going to go through either one because they're the same. They're identical. So we want to apply our general lighting load, 3 VA times 2,500, 7,500. This is the same, isn't it? So I won't bore you with that. But notice what's different is step 3. We're adding all these loads at 100%, besides the 3 VA per square foot and the small appliance circuits. We come up with 50,200. Now we're ready for the demand of 230.82 now. We have our sections up above here in step 2 and 3 and 1 we look at. So we take the first 10,000 at 100%, as we're instructed to do, and 220.82 B as in boy, 10,000. 10,000 from 50,200, we have 40,200 now at 40% that we're allowed to apply. We come up with 16,080. Totaling it, 26,080 VA that we would have there. Now, the neutral load then, we'll be looking at that coming up, but right now in step 5, the heat we take 65% of. By this code, I read it that we take 100% of the AC, but now that won't be the case in the 2023. You'll have to take 125% of that and compare it and see which is still the largest. But right now, 13,000 is the largest. So we add these two together and we come up then a total load of 39,080 when we apply both loads that we looked at. Now remember, the load in step 4 is 26,080. Here we have 13,000, so here's our service. Now notice this. When we divide that by 240, that same service now is 163, not 223 that we looked at in the standard. If you go back and look at your standard, it came up 223 amps, but here we're coming up now with 163. Now here's the problem that we're seeing. When we start looking at this and we size conductors for the standard, we'd need a 4-aught and a number 2 neutral is what we would need based upon the available short circuit current path of 250.102C1 and table 250.102C1, where you have to compare the calculation of the neutral 220.61 to the table 250.102C1 to see which is the largest. In this case, the number 2 would be larger than the number 3, so we have to select that with this section that we see here. These sections make it very clear to you when you get time at your leisure time if you want to go into it different. And then this just, step 1 just explains the neutral. And of course in our design book you can read the text and it gets into great detail for you if you want to do that. That's optional to you. And then of course when we go over to the table in the 2017, that was table 310.15 B7. Now it's table 310.12, and then you notice that 4-aught, we could go to table 310.12 and reduce it down to a 3-aught by that table based upon that ampacity of 223. Now, here's the problem. In the new 20.4H, it says you can protect these conductors at the ampacity of table 310.12. Now see, in the past, what we did as designers, we would take a 225 amp main for the 223 amps, and we would put that on a 3-aught conductor instead of a 4-aught, and most inspectors and designing engineers and electricians accepted that concept. Now, how are they going to look at this when it says protect it at the ampacities? Will they consider that 225 amp main protecting those 3-aught conductors, or would they require a 200 amp main to protect those 3-aught conductors? You see what I'm saying? you want to check this out very carefully and see just exactly when you drop down to note 2 in the illustration and you review 220.4H in the 2023 edition and see what that permissive rule will be interpreted. How will the authority having jurisdiction make that interpretation? Because it's very clear, as you see in note 1, service and feeder conductors, here's the key now, shall be permitted, meaning what? You have a choice. When you go to Article 90 and you look at shall be permitted, means you have a choice. It shall be permitted to be protected against what? Overcurrent. Based on what? 310.12 and your table. So this is a big change, and you want to look at it very carefully and see how the authority having jurisdiction will interpret it. Will they still let the old concept rule stand, or will they say, no, you got to protect those conductors based upon it? And notice, if you remember, in the optional calculation, we come up with 163 amps, which would be a 2 alt. But you could use a 1 alt by your table 310.12. And that makes a big difference. Are they going to let you now go ahead and use, instead of using a 2 alt, use a 1 alt and put it on a 175 amp main, or will they require it to match up to the ampacity of the 1 alt, which would be 150? You get the message? You see what this could create a problem? Now, I'm not saying it will, but it might. So look at that section very careful, 220.11, 220.14J, and look at very careful 220.4H, and check in with the authority having jurisdiction, you designers, for you automatically run a standard or optional and reduce the size of the conductor and try to use the same size main as a standard or optional calculation would allow. Look at that very carefully, and there you have it. My name is James Gray Stallcup, and I appreciate you watching this video, and if you like our videos, well, hit that subscribe button. Have a good day.